Well, Briana is a Briana. It's Brichford in Indiana, and so a very creative name there. But we needed to come up with something. But it is a like a fontina style. It's a washed curd cheese, and that means that after we have cut the curds and stirred them for a while, we drain a certain percentage of the whey out, and then add warm water, and then bring it up to the cook temperature and cook it like that. And that helps drop the pH, helps slow the drop in the pH, and makes it a little bit of a milder sort of cheese. And so like I say, it's a fontina style. It's an excellent melter. As far as all of our cheeses, it's probably they all melt well, and that has to do with being grass-fed and all that. But the fontina is the best of the melters. You can substitute it for raclette. As far as melting, it's not quite as fruity or as raclette, but it's a good substitute. And also that the Briana with truffles is excellent melted. There's a cheese shop in Cincinnati, the Rind, and they do raclette night, and sometimes they'll use Briana for that.
Well, and Dad, what made you want to make this type of cheese?
When I started, I wanted a short, medium, and long. Okay, and so
it was about the length.
That's pretty much. Ameribella can go out the door at 60 days. We generally take the Briana about 90 days, and we release it. And the Everton, we don't release it until it's about 7 or 8 months old. And then we have an aged version of the Everton, and it's going to be at least 18 months old, and it's a little different, but so
you pick Briana, the recipe for Briana, based on the length of aging time.
Primarily, yeah.
Okay.
But it tastes good, and so
always practical.
well, yeah, well, definitely, that's one thing. Some cheesemakers I've met you can't just be making different stuff all the time. You've got to do I probably make more cheeses than I should, because we have several that we don't sell much of, but I like them. But yeah, you've got to, it's sitting on the shelf, and the clock is ticking, and it's got to go someplace, and hopefully not to the hogs. And although they do enjoy it, but the Briana, one thing I really like about it is it's got a yeast in it, and it has kind of a pasta taste to it. You taste that yeast in it, and gives it a earthier flavor, and that's one thing I really like about it. But
when you said that about the the yeastiness to it, and that was we were talking before, that was a flavor that was lost when I started building the pairings about what I wanted to put with it. And you suggested that this is one that goes really well with fruit. So I thought like blueberry, blackberry, but I lost that. And I really love the flavor, that yeastiness that comes out, with this cheese. And it is as a piece of art. I mean, this rind is so beautiful, and the cheese has just got some nice little holes. It's got a great aroma to it. The rind is just, it has such a nice earthiness to it. This is quite a beautiful piece of cheese. And you consider this to be what style?
It's like a fontina.
And I mean, a lot of people think about fontinas in that, they get that Swedish red wax and flavor. This is more like
Italian fontina.
More based on like a
fontina of Asta, with that natural rind on there. This has got a lot of love, making that. Pairing wise, what I did with it is, as I mentioned before, fruit. I went with a Bonnie's Jams, which is this is a peach and ginger, which really brings out the yeastiness. It brings out more of the butter. And I'm just putting it on a brewer's cracker because, well, you know, I do like beer, and I'm pairing it with it is a Blue Point, and it's a toasted lager. And so the yeast with the toasted lager really kind of brings out more of the butter of the cheese. So I really love that, how those work together.
Yeah, and when we talk about, you know, pairing it with fruits too, a lot of times what we do is just simply put it on an apple. You know, it's a really like a tart, you know, green apple. That's a really great way to get a touch of sweetness, but to also get some of the yeastiness out of that flavor. Um, and you know, I also tried I've tried other iterations of this through the years. Um, and I really like it with green olives as an accompaniment as well. I feel like it gives a more assertive flavor to both the olives and the cheese. It kind of brings out the best of both of them. Um,
That's funny because I decided that the olive portion of it was actually going with the Antebellum. So that was, so I have some
Ameribella, yeah.
green, they are kind of, they're roasted or grilled olives to give it a little bit of that smokiness that I thought would be really fun. But
Yeah. Well, and I
Oh,
think that both the Briana and the Ameribella have some of that yeasty flavor. It just comes out in different ways. Um, and then the
they
other thing,
they both have yeast in the culture
so that
mix. Yeah.
that makes sense. Um,
Good. It's
the other
good
thing
that you
that I do
taste
with
it.
Briana is I make a lot of um, pizza over, you know, the quarantine time. My dad insisted that I needed to learn how to make sourdough. So I did, but I had a lot.
Encouraged you.
That was a firm encouragement. But I had a lot of discard, so I started making pizza dough with all the sourdough discard. And I
mm,
find that Brianna is a really great cheese for those pizzas. I think it stands up to the more hearty crust of a sourdough crust. And it melts so beautifully. And it can pair really nicely with most of I just throw a bunch of veggies on it and it's great.
I'm thinking of changing out my pairings because I have the olives with the next one, and also sourdough toast. You know, so thinking, wow, you know, so it's a nice alternative.
Yeah.
You know, I prefer a little bit of fruit with mine. Fontinas have been always a big fan. I've been a big fan of Fontinas for a long time. And to be able to see, you know, such an authentic cheese and the beauty of this. I mean, this piece, and by the way, your packaging, your wrapping of these is spectacular. You know, this is, I think, my 69th or 70th show. So I get the cheeses in, and the cryovacuuming is the worst because, you know, it just mashes the cheese. So there's a few people that actually hand wrap it. And your cheese that came in was so beautifully. I mean, whoever's doing your wrapping, you know, I'd like to hire them to do all my Christmas wrapping because that is the most beautiful wrap. I mean, no extra. It was just, I took pictures of it because I was like, this is so beautiful. You know, I mean, it's wrapping, but still it's the way you care for your cheese really comes across, not just in the beauty of the cheese itself, but also in how you care for it once it leaves. And that's a hard part.
Thank you. That's Leslie, and
Yeah.
I guess that's why we keep her around.
Right, they're wrapping.
Yep.
Plastic is just a terrible thing to do to cheese. Uh, uh, we do have some people that want retail ready cuts, and we vacuum pack for them and all that, and we really don't like to do that because paper is the best thing you should do for your cheese. I tasted before in the cheese shop one time in the States here. It was in the display case wrapped in in plastic, and it tasted like plastic, you know. And so it really is, it's the wrong thing to do to cheese. But yeah, as I said, Everton was inspired by Beaufort. It's a Gruyere style. And of course, I can't use either of those names, so we just call it Everton. And it is a Alpine style. It has a higher cook temperature than the Briana, and a longer aging time. Now, we also sell this as a premium reserve. Like I said, it's over 18 months old. You get a lot of its intense pineapple flavor, the tyrosine crystals. Sometimes when you're in that part of the aging room, you're just overwhelmed with the smell of pineapple. That's my favorite cheese. I don't make any cheese that I don't like, but Everton is my favorite.
Well, and I feel like Everton is a great one to see too, just the effects of it being grass-fed, because even in that picture you couldn't really see, but Michael, I'm sure in the cheese that you have and also the cheese that I have, it's really golden. So you really see the benefits of the grass-fed coming through in the color of that cheese.
Big carotene.
Yeah, and that is another cheese that does pretty well in melting. Michael, you were talking earlier about pairing, beers, but I feel like the Everton kind of pairs well with just about anything you want to drink with it. My parents drink pretty much exclusively red wine, and so it does really well with the red wine. But I'm not so much a red wine drinker. I tend to prefer bourbon, and I really like to drink bourbon with the Everton. I feel like the caramelized notes pick up that like pineapple-y sweetness of the Everton, and they just like really wow together.
I'm a huge fan of bourbon. I work a lot with Basil Hayden and Knob Creek and a few of the other brands, doing pairings with them across the boards and that. And I think bourbon goes with everything really well. And even if it doesn't, the bourbons just makes it a little better because
Yeah.
it's so good. But
well, I'd say the same thing about gin, but I just like to drink gin, so I don't know what it fares. But Everton and Briana together is your perfect classic fondue combination as well. So little white wine and kirsch, and where you go.
But I just feel like that Everton does really well with some of those, like what I like about the bourbon with it is that there's that caramely note. And so it's all those places where you can get a little sweetness. I like the Everton actually with a jam, whether it be, a fruit jam or an onion jam. I feel like it goes well with both of those options. And I just feel like it's got enough flavor to blend with most things and not overpower them. So I feel like it's my most versatile choice. If I don't know if something's going to work, I just assume that Everton will work.
It's interesting that in your descriptors, you talk about it having a little bit more tartness than you would expect in a Gruyere or a Comte in that. And that's very true. This is, it's got a nice little tang to it. I was really surprised on the sweet nuttiness but that little bit of tang that comes through really stood up. And that's where I could see where you could go with the fruit on it. I went with chorizo. This is Volpe, a little chorizo, and then some grilled olives that I got from Davina. And then my cracker is a rosemary sourdough. And so then I'd put these together and have a little, that's kind of like a little mini appetizer there, little piece on that. Really fun. I think because of the tanginess and trying to get a little bit more butter in the flavor, I think that's where the charcuterie comes in. and I paired it up with the Sierra Nevada Pale Ale. I wanted something that was not hoppy, but this is a full flavored cheese, and so it can really stand up to the maltiness and that nice soft. And Sierra Nevada's Pale does that really well.
Yeah, I've recently been pairing it actually with some sours. I was drinking, I can't remember the name of it, but I also is it Freedom of Speech, the Revolution Brewery peach sour, is really good with the Everton as well. Gets a little bit of that fruitiness, but with that sour profile, you kind of get a little bit of everything there.
Now, I have friends that have a brewery here, 610 Brewery, and he does a lot of really amazing sours, a lot of Belgian styles, and they do grilled cheese sandwiches just about every night. I'm going to save this piece here for them because they are going to love this with their sours, and also with a grilled cheese, with making a grilled cheese out of this, because this is fabulous. And
my favorite grilled cheese is Everton with like a Italian garlic bread grilled cheese. That's
Texas toast.
I do the Everton with a balsamic onion jam grilled cheese. So a little sweet, a little onion, you know.
So on the Briana, the rind smelled that yeastiness. This is just wonderful. It's just has such a nice mellow flavor nose to it, and it's not in your face. It's just really amazingly light in flavor and nose. I mean, I for like a Gruyere, you get that woodsy flavor, where this, you get a nice sweetness on this rind. It's beautiful. Anything else?
It's the milk and the grass is what makes all these cheeses, and the breeding and feeding.
You do a little something too.
What size wheel does this come in? I mean, what is is this a 22 pound or 40?
25, 26 pounds. I don't like the ones that are below 24 because they get a little too thin, and we got to sell those earlier. They don't age as long. And the girls get upset when I make 30 pounders. and we are an artisan operation. So I have just X amount of milk coming in from whatever period of time prior to making cheese. And I make that work, so we don't make them the same size all the time. They're within a range. And of course, also with being a seasonal producer, the feed and the weather affect the taste and the cheese yield of the milk. Also, the stage of the cow's lactation will affect that yield too. So it's kind of, we're having to deal with that all the time, and you have to adjust for your acid driving cultures in your cheese, what it takes at certain times of year, because the milk reacts differently throughout the course of the year. And being seasonal, it's like you have one lactation curve that you're dealing with throughout the whole season. And so really some of the best cheeses, for different types, but for like the Everton, it's good all the time, hopefully, but in the June through July, early August, when the grass is doing its best, that really helps that. But then towards the end of the year, your yield goes way up. So we have to adjust for that all the time. But I tend to make the Briana I shoot for about 22 pounds on that, a 16-inch diameter wheel. And on the Evertons, we're shooting for, 25, 26. So.
Well, I have to say that's a beautiful cheese. It's beautiful rind. It's a very classic style that you guys really do beautiful work on that.
I didn't want to go out and reinvent the wheel on some of this stuff, so I did try to start with the classics. You know, we have come up with a few other cheeses on our own, but these three we went back to the classics for that.
Well, and going into the third cheese, just talking about the seasonality, that is incredibly important with Ameribella.
All right, let's
Because you
go ahead.
definitely get a different taste in the Ameribella in the spring than you do in the fall.
The nature of the protein in the milk is different in the spring, and it really affects the texture and all that. So we strive for consistency, but accept the fact that we're not going to hit it. You know, so we work with that. But the Ameribella is it's got the most complicated culture blend of any of the cheeses we make, and you see that in the flavor, and it's excellent for making risotto. It too is a good melter. You know, I like to take a sauteed chicken breast and lay a piece of Ameribella over the top of it and let it get soft, and that's really good.
I feel like the Ameribella, it can stand up to heartier flavors because it is a heartier flavor. So even when you're talking about putting it on chicken or, I feel like, you can eat it with cornichons, like that vinegariness really picks up on the yeastiness in the Ameribella, and they play really well off each other. It's also a really good cheese with mustard. So like if you want to just have a little open faced sandwich with some, crusty bread and a little bit of mustard, a little bit of Ameribella, that is also delicious. I just feel like it plays really well off those kind of tangier flavors. I know a lot of people like this cheese with some of those more flavorful beers that don't really appeal to me, but it works well for other people.
Tallaghio is like one of my, another one of my really favorite cheeses. And I mentioned this when we were starting before, that I worked for 7 years for a company that was a European importer. So I worked a lot with those. And so I taught a lot about Tallaghio, and, tasting Tallaghio every single week, or putting it through there and then tasting yours. I think there's a lost part of the transfer. When it's coming over to the United States, there are certain things, that large amount of molding that you get on a real Tallaghio through there. And, the beauty that you have here, I cut this in half and because I was just so impressed by the beauty and how well the rind is structured on this. This is such another beautiful cheese, and the buttery flavors on here really comes out. The yeastiness, is there, but not as as predominant as we could pick up on the Briana. I paired this up. This is Girl Meets Dirt, and it's out of the Pacific Northwest, and she does a lot of heritage preserves and all of that. And this is quince. And so believe it or not, I thought, the flavors that I really like, I paired it up with quince, and then a little bit of rye. This is Effie's rye biscuit. And so having a little bit of that structure and then the flavor characteristics, I really wanted to bring out more of the butter, and I thought that would do really well. And the beer wise, I don't want any hoppiness, a hint of hoppiness. So I went with the Highland Brewery. This is the Gaelic Ale. So it's got a lot of malt, and that maltiness, I think, really works well. When I sampled it out earlier, there's just so much butter. I mean, Matthew, how do you get that much butter into this cheese?
Normandy, Jersey, and Tarentaise. But
Yeah, well, and it was, I don't always have Ameribella on hand since I don't live at home. But it's always interesting to me to see the Ameribella at different times of the year, because this time of year, the Ameribella that we get is a little firmer. Whereas I always feel like the spring Ameribella is just, it actually spreads almost like a butter. And you get that buttery flavor profile all the time, but I feel like in the spring, yeah, it's very much like that. So it's almost like, I don't know how many times I've done a tasting, at a specialty shop, and somebody's like, "Is this butter?" And it's not, but I can see why they would think that.
Well, when you're, so we adjust our process with that, trying to and during the aging, we're trying to, it's like a little football that we're wiping every day, and it's full of goo, and we're trying to keep it from rupturing and spilling that goo out all over the place, but we also don't want it to be too firm. So it's always a struggle to get that right, and we change things fairly often throughout the season to make that happen. It's our strongest smelling cheese, and a lot of people are put off by that, like a lot of washed rinds. But once you get it past your nose, you're good to go. It's you get the butter and the sweet taste of it, and it doesn't taste anywhere near as funky as it smells.
That's true. A lot of people are alarmed by the smell, but it doesn't taste like it smells.
Well, without the aroma, it doesn't have that flavor. That's the imparting portion of it that makes it so beautiful. The texture of this cheese is incredible, and I could see from the photo that how creamy this could be. And this is, there is a little bit of a hint of tanginess to it, but it's really far in the background. The red up front is all that butter, and that's just so nice to have. So, like I mentioned before, a lot of the Tallaghios that I ran into are, they come in completely covered with green mold. Do you have any of that? I mean, is that something that is inherent in making the cheese, or is it just the the Italians do that?
No, that happens. American consumers, distributors are kind of, some people see that and celebrate it. Other people send it back or throw it away. It's nothing that's going to hurt you, but when we occasionally have some people will complain about a little blue mold on there or something, and that's just, you just wipe it off and you're fine. If it's not going to hurt you to eat it, but wipe it off and you're fine. And yes, I've seen some Italian paintings, Italian Tallaghios that look like a psychedelic painting of some sort, that with all the mold on them. But I think it's just a matter of time. If you put it in the wrong environment long enough, it's going to develop all those molds, and we try to avoid that. One thing about it being a cheesemaker is, when you send something out the door and it doesn't sell for several months, you really don't know. I know what it'll be like if I kept it at home in controlled conditions for that long, but you don't have any control over what's going to happen to that cheese. And so if somebody takes it and backpacks it and throws it on the shelf for 8 months, it's gonna end up being something different than it would be if it were cared for what we would consider properly. So, but that's not too big of an issue. We do have some problem. Sometimes people don't care for that. We get a little blue mold on it, but that's about it.
So what's your suggestion on storing these? Once I got these cheeses, what would be the best way to be able to keep them? Because I'm not going to finish them tonight, obviously. So probably over the next few days. So what's your recommendation? Do I put them back in paper?
Absolutely. In paper, for several weeks in a refrigerator is just fine. The best thing to do with them is eat them as soon as they reach room temperature. But other than that, paper is the thing to put them in, and tight enough that they don't dry out, and but they do need to breathe a little bit, or else you get all that concentration of funkiness. Paper is, you know, they make better cheese papers than what we're just using a butcher paper and stuff, and we probably could use a better paper for that, like Overton or something like that, and it'll breathe a little more. But definitely, plastic is not good for cheese, and you know, that's why I think a lot of commercial cheeses have a much sweeter flavor. You're talking about how there's tang in there and stuff, and I personally am not a real big fan of sweet stuff, and so I want to go more for the savory flavors in it. But I think that a lot of times the sweetness will in a commercial cheese will cover for that the plastic flavor that you get from vac packing it. And so you don't notice it as much as you might with a cheese like ours. But yeah, plastic is a rude thing to do to a cheese. We do it from time to time, but it's not the it's not the best. Thank you very much for the opportunity to do this, and we really appreciate it.
Yes, thanks so much for having us today.
My pleasure. And you know, these are authentic styles of cheese that are, you know, exceed some of the characteristics that you would find coming across. The flavors that they bring across here, you can taste the grassiness in there. There's a lot of depth in their cheeses that I think would be appreciated by anybody that loves a well-made cheese. This is worth every penny. You know, it's definitely above and beyond the typical cheese. And as you say about commodities, there's a lot of people that are making cheeses, but there's nothing that I've tasted that is equal to yours in this category. These are beautiful, well-made, and well-structured cheeses. Thank you.
Thank you. People can find us at jnbcheese.com, and we have 6 other cheeses we sell as well. So, but
all right. Well, I mean, I hope that you know, we get going a little bit further. We'll have you back on, and we'll talk about 6 more cheeses.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Take care and be safe out there. And you know, we'll catch up real soon. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.